We are live on the Venture to Victory podcast, where we look at the entrepreneurial journey from startup to exit. And today I am super, super pumped because we've got Mitch Thrower of events.com in the house, who is an amazing human being. And I'm going to start off, well, I'm going to say hello, Mitch. How you doing?
Tim, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So I was so excited to have Mitch because I came across Mitch in a different way. For those who know me, I've been recruiting for 20, 25 years. I have this huge network. I'm always researching interesting, fascinating people. But I came across Mitch accidentally through a bizarre hobby that I have, which is I like to watch valedictorian speeches. A lot of them are, collegiate commencement speeches, like the famous one from Steve Jobs, where I saw a cool one with famous actors like Denzel Washington. I came across Mitch's commencement speech from St. Lawrence University and was so blown away by how deep it was, how thoughtful, and how hilarious it was that I just felt compelled to reach out to you, not knowing you, and just give you credit. I feel like, great work deserves recognition. And that's how we kind of began our conversations that have extended. I don't know how long it's been, a decade or so, but it's really been a lot of fun. It's very rare because so often, Mitch, you look at someone that's very successful, that's maybe in their late 40s, 50s, or 60s, and you go, well, I hear about the journey, but what would it have been like to have met that guy when he was in his 20s? And there's AI stuff that shows you images of Steve Jobs when he was young, and they put mashups of clips, and you can kind of see that. But for most people, unless you're a super famous guy like a Bill Gates, that isn't available, but it really is for you. And it's going to be fun as we go through this podcast today and for the viewing audience to see if those dreams and aspirations that were so prevalent in that speech, how they manifested themselves 35 years later, or how they changed and what you've learned and the wisdom that you can share with the crowd. So I'm really excited by that. As a brief intro, Mitch has started, so many companies from his college days all the way through. He is the quintessential entrepreneur. We're going to name a couple, which would include Active.com. Active raised, I believe, around $53 million in venture capital. Is that correct?
Much bigger number. Much.
Well, we won't disclose that, but anything 50 million plus, I think, is certainly noteworthy. And that ended up going public before then being sold to Vista for slightly over $1 billion.
That's correct.
And that's kind of not your opening act, but maybe the third inning. So we got a long way to go. Mitch is also the owner, chairman, and president of Triathlete Magazine. And there's a lot on the internet about how he got into that, but it's the world's largest triathlon magazine. He is a competitor, having competed in 22 Ironmans, including 13 world championships. And I saw this footnote in a bio that said, you're the only photojournalist to ever photograph and film the Ironman Triathlon World Championships as an actual competitor competing in the event. So that would be interesting. And maybe a lot of GoPros wired to your body, but I think that's another fascinating thing. Of course, he's the current founder, chairman, and CEO, co-founder, I should say, of events.com, which I saw a press announcement in August that you were putting together a structure through a partnership to eventually go public, hopefully in 2025. Sounds like it's going to be a big lineup for IPOs that year. And you're going to go public under the ticker symbol. I love this, RSVP. Doesn't get any better for the number one events technology company in the world. So that's cool. And of course, Mitch has been on the speaking circuit over the years. He's been a TEDx speaker, and he's had speaking engagements as through affiliations through Yale and Stanford B School and a number of others. So we're really, really excited to have you on the show today, and welcome to the podcast.
Tim, thanks. It's great to be here. And what a journey it's been, right? We did end up selling Triathlete Magazine to a group and then rolled it into a much larger enterprise and then sold that entire enterprise to another group. So it's really all events.com now.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, I guess every event is potentially an events.com event, including some of those garage band performances we used to do back in the day. Would have been nice to have a platform to reach everybody. So look, let's jump right into events. Usually I do an origin story, but people can check you out online. They can Google your name. There's so many cool things. If you want to learn about triathlons and competition, there's dedicated pods with Mitch on that. If you want to hear about his early days, selling passport documents and all these really amazing things, it's fascinating. But we're going to jump right into events because we brought it up. Let's start off with, man, it's got to be one of the greatest domain names of all time. Love to know, how did you acquire it? What were your goals initially when you did acquire it? And kind of where are you going today? We obviously noted the IPO, but usually when companies go public, that's not we call it an exit, but it's really not the end. It's the beginning to that next quantum jump. So I would love to get your perspective on those.
Tim, I think you're right. It's definitely the beginning. The potential public path that we're on, certainly we're looking at that as, a starting line, not a finishing line. And when it comes to the domain name, when you have things like hotels.com, cars.com, apartments.com, you take these iconic domain names and then you put them with the core asset that they represent. Like, you find all the hotels on hotels.com. You find the apartments on apartments layered in with events, and you can not only manage, market, and monetize your event at events.com, but you can discover, interact, and transact with the events you love. It's almost like you're taking real estate, which is the domain name, and you're marrying the land with the building, right?
Yeah.
And you have that accretion in value when you take the core business that's tied to the domain. I know when cars.com sold to Gannett, they valued just the domain name at $872 million. In the transaction. So, and that's an outlier, of course, but a wonderful outlier for us nonetheless. But, the origins of the company, we started as really an incubator. We were looking at a whole host of different things to do. We looked at the connected car. We acquired a company in the civic space. We used to power all the city of Palo Alto, Newport Beach, et cetera. And then my co-founder and business partner had this name, and then we said, well, what's the name? And he said, it's easy, it's events.com. And it was like an aha moment. But there's a problem. It's owned by CBS. And that's not a problem.
It's a financial problem.
And any financial problem isn't a problem. It's a quantified solution, right? As soon as something has a number attached to it, it's no longer a problem. It's a quantified solution. And in our world, we took on a long form journey to negotiate the purchase from CBS. They said it was the domain they talked the most about and did the least with, which was interesting statement. And for us, it was just kind of natural, right? With my background with Triathlete Magazine, Competitor Group, Active.com, and combined with Stephen's background with also a host of publications and building the Active.com of Canada, it just was a natural swim lane for us. So in many ways, it was not an aha moment only. It was a moment of clarification of purpose. And, pick your swimming lane as an entrepreneur, because the most powerful force in the entrepreneurial universe is focus. And so that allowed us to divest the other assets and then just full steam ahead with events.com.
Now, I don't know if you'll disclose what you purchased it for, but I remember, Dana White always talks publicly about when they bought the UFC, all they really bought was an old rackety cage and a domain name for $2 million. So, and I'm sure CBS was like, hey, we'll sell to you for $14.95 or $10.95 for a 3-year renewal like you get on GoDaddy. So I'm assuming it was something significant.
Well, we won't disclose the amount yet, but it'll likely be disclosed at some point when there's a Netflix docuseries or a Hulu's something. Who knows what'll happen in the future? But I'm sure at some point that will be well known.
That's terrific. So look, AI is changing the world. It's moving at a blistering speed of development. It's hard to get kind of a handle all around it. Not just for us that are in tech, where we're kind of sitting in the Silicon Valley or in California, it's a daily thing, but for anyone to try to get a grasp for the speed of change. Couple things. How is that impacting, or how are you using AI at events.com? What's your perspective on skill development for executive and leaders moving forward in this new area?
Yeah, Tim, I have a lot of thoughts here, in particular around first executive development or personnel development with AI. The famous concept and quote that you've heard, which is AI is not going to take your job, but someone who's using it will. Right? The essence of artificial intelligence is there will be so many people that let this pass them by, and their opportunities will pass them by. And when I say this, I'm talking about not just broad understanding of artificial intelligence tool sets that they can use personally and professionally, but I'm talking about taking a step back and really understand what is happening. The Oppenheimer moment of AI, right? There's a wonderful video out called The AI Dilemma that you can watch on YouTube. And it's not The Social Dilemma, which was also a wonderful movie, but The AI Dilemma on YouTube. Find the original. It's phenomenal. And that moment in time, he describes as, like Oppenheimer called and said, The world has changed. This is a moment where the world has changed, and people are going to be looking back on this moment in time and wishing they did something different, especially as executives or people that are working for companies. And that's in large part education. And the beautiful thing is education is widely available around artificial intelligence, prompt engineering, usage of AI agents, and then the developments, or just even going to a website like there's an AI for that.com, typing in your industry or sector and looking at all the tool sets that have been developed, and having an AI strategy that's built at your company, or utilizing AI for not just making the world of your team more efficient and
Hmm.
removing things that are arduous and lengthy and unnecessary and costly, but more importantly, thinking what now must you do, or what now can you do when you're enabled with this catapult or these solid rocket boosters of
Hmm.
AI. But they're dead boosters, and they don't work if you don't know how to use them and you don't know what they can do. So, probably went on a little long there, but, and in our case, there's things we can say we're doing, and there's things that we're doing that we haven't announced to the world yet. So
Yeah.
we'll leave all the MNPI off of the discussion. But when it comes to AI, we love the fact that our business is enabled with AI and that we can help event organizers be more efficient at what they're doing and help participants find and interact and transact with more events they love. Amazon shows you what to buy. Netflix shows you what to watch, and events.com will show you what to do, where, and with who. So we're really excited about that.
That's amazing. As someone who runs an executive recruiting firm, we're working with senior leadership, usually, obviously, C-level VP folks. Will that be part of the interviewing process, a component of in the future, where you're going to sit down with someone and kind of prompt them subtly on what's your curiosity? I'm not talking about a CTO that comes on board to work on AI, but the average C-level exec who comes in, who's maybe they're running accounting or something. Well, I'm wondering if that's going to be, at least in your opinion, kind of the curiosity point of discussion when you have interviews in the future, and whether that would also be maybe for any candidates watching this who are thinking about making a move, going somewhere else, if maybe before that big interview, they should brush up a little in case the question comes up.
Yeah, I'll even make a crazy bold prediction. I think that understanding AI will be equivalent to your educational background in the future. I think that knowledge and skill sets in AI will be a fundamental requirement for the majority of the positions that people are going to get hired for. So in the next, say, 12 to 24 months, you used to say, people you'd see on the bottom of resumes, proficiency with Microsoft or Google
Right.
Suite. Now the crazy thing there is, and I've interviewed a ton of people, when you see proficiency in any of those areas historically, whether it's Google Suite or Microsoft, the number of people or Google Workspace, the number of people who are proficient in Microsoft, I'm not talking about know how to use Microsoft Word, Excel, or
Right.
other Microsoft programs. I'm talking about proficiency and training in those core
Hmm.
platforms is de minimis.
Yeah.
And the number of people who are proficient in AI is an even smaller number. I mean, everyone knows about it, or a lot of people know about it. They can talk about it, they can do it, they can use ChatGPT. But if you ask someone to describe effective prompt engineering and modalities or large language models, you're going to get some blank stares. So I think it's going to become like a requisite for much of what's happening in the future world. And companies will wake up and say, wait a minute, I'm hiring. I've got someone over here who's unbelievably proficient in what's happening in the future, and someone that's unbelievably proficient sort of in the past, because they sort of know how to use Microsoft, and I mean, think about people's phones. How many people have taken a course on all of the features and functions of their mobile phone, Android or iPhone? Or their Apple Watch, right? I mean, we live. It's one of the greatest waste moments for humanity is we have these great technologies that we know can improve our lives, and we don't train them.
Yeah. Well, I have a great free training program. It's called a 12-year-old. And he's
There we
just
go.
constantly coming in, messing with my phone, showing me new things to do on it. So that's absolutely incredible. We're quite busy. I would say we're in a breakthrough environment. There's two things that are so immediately demonstrable in technology that I've never seen before. One was the Waymo cars that have been driving around my neighborhood for 2 years, where autonomous driving, driverless cars. When you tell someone who's not kind of living in San Francisco and doesn't have that orientation, they literally don't believe you until they come and do it. So that once you see that or you experience it, you realize, wow, we are in a new world. And the other is ChatGPT, because you have a bar, you can type anything you want, and all of a sudden you've got the knowledge of the world, with a little hallucinogenic aspect to it still, but you have most of the knowledge of the world at your fingertips. And you think of the power, how that will transform just somebody who is not very well educated, that doesn't come from means. If they have access to that phone and that they have all the information, networking capabilities, everything at their fingertip. And if you're someone who believes in social equity and all these trends and how technology can help, we're on the precipice of a whole new world. So it's super exciting. So I want to move a little bit to that.
Completely agree. It's going to be a whole new world.
I want to kind of shift a little bit to that great commencement speech again, St. Lawrence University, because part of that, you had a little thought experiment where you looked at kind of what really is time, past, present, future. And I thought it was really kind of cool. And kind of the conclusion, or at least what I inferred from it, was that old idea that the present moment is really all we have, and that's not something to be squandered. Seems like a core belief of yours back then as a young man. And I wanted to see how that belief has affected your decision-making as an entrepreneur, but also life and family, things in general.
I think, and thank you, by the way, for watching that speech given back in the Jurassic period. Ironically enough, it's how I met my wife.
No way.
She stumbled into the speech and reached out because she was also writing a speech. And then we ended up connecting, and then we ended up meeting, 4 minutes after meeting her, it was like done, got married, got engaged 4 months later. Then she kept me in due diligence for a few years before the wedding actually happened. But so that speech is really been interesting to look back on for me as well.
Yeah.
And when it comes to time, that present moment, I think for me, I lost my sister at age 16, right? She was my best friend.
To hear that.
Yeah, thank you for that. She was my best friend. She was 16. Her name was Stacy. She was so full of life. Yeah. And she died in my arms.
Oh my gosh.
And it was such a defining moment where at age 14, she was 16.
Yeah.
You realize that brevity of life, and you really start to think, that's probably what catapulted me to become a philosophy major.
Yeah.
And you think for a while, that's probably where a lot of the focus on fitness came, and my passion for triathlon and my passion to create active.com to help the world get more active, and to create events.com to help people get together.
Right.
There's a spark that comes from when you see someone's life extinguished. And the only moment we have is the present moment. And I think I said something in the speech like, the present, or I said, the end of the sentence I'm saying right now is still in the future, but after a few more words, it'll be in the past. You remember the sentence a moment ago.
Of course. Yeah.
And that is such a moment of realization that we're all in these time machines moving second by second into the future. And we can change the future based on cumulative decisions that we're making throughout the day, throughout the moment, in our careers, in our lives, and everything, our families. And so for me, I think it's been a huge part is that present moment. It always comes back to that present moment. How can you live in the present moment? How can you not wallow in the past? And how can you look at, problems as solutions that you have to figure out, or the approach to challenges, right? Because after health, a mentor of mine said this to me once, after health, everything is profit. And so when you live in that modality, like I'm alive and I'm healthy, or maybe there's a thing, right? Because most people will have a health thing. Mm-hmm. And everyone thinks that no one else has a health thing, but we're all going to get a health thing. And ultimately, we're all going to get a really big health thing. But that's a moment in your life where you realize, like, we're here. Like, there's an opportunity unlike any other opportunity in history.
Yeah.
For the people that are in their careers and lives right now. And I do think finally, people who lived before cell phones and then got cell phones, it was a transformative moment. People who lived before the internet and then the internet came, we know who they are, who took advantage of the fact that the internet happened or technology happened. And so we are the generation that's now also looking at the transformation of AI. And so there's a pounce moment that can't be understated. But yeah, present moment. I blended around and wallowed on that one, but it's present moment.
Well, I loved I believe you said the time machine that we call our body. I never thought of our bodies are time machines, except they go, in terms of physics, they go one direction.
But isn't it great?
But
Like, it goes one direction, but 1 second at a time, which allows you to enjoy
it
every
does.
moment.
Yeah. I spend a lot of, I spend time intentionally trying to, slow down the perception of time. You can't really change time, but the perception of time, your awareness, I try to spend a lot of time doing that. But it's something that you have to do with intent, with design. I think a lot of us, you leave work and, 35 minutes you land in your driveway and you go, how did I get here? Was it in a Waymo autonomous driving car? No, I drove that, but I was not aware that I was driving, and I missed out on certain things. I can never recuperate that. So I think time's really important. And I will, for the audience, I will put the link to Mitch's his speech that he gave at St. Lawrence University in the show notes, because it is grainy and old. He looks young and handsome, but it is certainly the audio clarity is wonderful in it. There's so many incredible things you're going to learn about this young man who became a tremendous success over the years. So I want to talk a little bit about the psychology of raising money. I know you've mentioned this a little bit before. Obviously, in my world, most of my clients are venture-backed clients. Some of it are private equity, family office. But once in a while, you run into a few interesting people that never really got on that train. They found a way of funding an independent, friends and family, through non-traditional institutional type investors, or through relationships with wealthy individuals that really believed in them, their idea, and their potential. And I'd love to get your thoughts on the psychology of all that going into it, because a lot of people, their idea is, I need money. I'll take money from wherever if that's what it takes.
Yeah, bad idea.
Yeah, of course.
So speaking in the specific realm of psychology of fundraising, I think many entrepreneurs get it wrong. They raise money. They think they're asking people for money. They're out there sort of thinking they're going to, let's go get a term sheet. Let's find someone to give us a term sheet. Can I raise money? Can I please have some money? And they're doing it completely wrong. They need to not ask for money. They need to ask for help. Because when you get to the right people who can help you, it's so much more than cash. Refining your approach to the attempt to find investors, you should narrowly focus on people who can help you, who can fund you, and who know and love your business. And that goes for friends and family, private equity, growth equity, VCs, because your outcomes will be significantly different, because you're aligned by human experience is all based in, or human relationships rather, are all based in common experience. And if you're with an investor who you share that with, it becomes so much more powerful. Many of the investors I had in Triathlete Magazine were triathletes. That's a great place to meet people. And that's another thing is people need to climb out of their emails. You cannot raise money by sending out decks and emails. You have to get out and meet people. And, you have to go to places where capital is, not an investor conference, but maybe a family office conference. You have to go to a place where you are going to put yourself in the room with the right people who, it's a target-rich environment, if you will, and psychologically and emotionally change your approach as a entrepreneur to, I am not here to take money. I'm not here to get money. I'm here to give you a fantastic return, God willing, if everything goes well. And if I do my job and all the people do our jobs and all the things we're doing work, we're here to help you. We are giving you an opportunity to invest in this business. Not, the approach that many first-time entrepreneurs have, with who never asked for cash, to really flip it and say, you're not asking for cash. You're giving people an opportunity to generate a return. And that's an enormous shift I've seen in some of the people I've talked to when they're out raising cash and understand the markets, right? Read the book Venture Deals if you haven't already, which is a phenomenal way. So be smarter than your VC or lawyer or venture capitalist or lawyer. I think it's Brad Feld, but really, psychologically, it's a shift. And then maybe one final point is get old fashioned, right? We'll send out these beautiful big books that are 11 by 17, and they are glossy books that overview the business and the people who are in it. And we've done that all throughout, even though people are like, well, send me the email. But if you leave someone's office and you have basically an umbrella sized presentation that's left behind that doesn't look good in the trash can, and it has your logo all over it, you're leaving echoes, right? So, get old fashioned and get out there. People invest in people, right? You want to invest in a CEO you trust your kids with, and that only comes from getting to know them. And that business you're investing in really has to get the personal approach.
So it sounds like I think so many young entrepreneurs, they're just looking for that funding and they're approaching institutional investors as, you know, I have a need, you can help me, as opposed to approaching it reverse, which is you have a need to make money and raise funds, and I'm the guy who can provide that for you. I guess the question is, how do you do that in a way where it doesn't sound overly arrogant, where someone says, wow, it's a different perspective. I get it. You're super confident, but not sounding like, hey, you should invest in me because I'm going to make you a lot of money and no one else can. How do you do that in a
Yeah.
way that comes off as being thoughtful?
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of a genuine belief in yourself as an entrepreneur that you're going to help this person generate a return on their investment in you. I think it's also and there are certain regional differences, right? When you're raising money in New York versus Chicago versus the Bay Area versus San Diego. And the reality is when you're raising money from everywhere, right?
Yeah.
You want to look for investors everywhere. You want to get on a plane and go to other cities and travel to places where you're geographically not concentrated. But it is something that's a sensitive balance, right? Being genuine, being truthful, being open, but letting them know, hey, this is why we're here. We want to help you generate a return, and we would love to have you involved for reasons more than cash.
That's a great point. Again, I think for young people who are struggling, it's a different way of approaching it. And I hope they take that wisdom to heart very quickly. Another thing you mentioned in the speech that I remember was that I wrote this down, that if you were able to run it out 20 years from back then and ask yourselves, I love the statement, what will the world demand of us? Demand of us. And what do we need to do today to prepare for it? And I know that was going back, 35 years, looking 20 years out, but hey, we're here in 2025 and we're about to see the biggest technological shift I think the world has ever seen with AI. And what is it that we need to do today, whether it's you, me, my 12-year-old, my daughter in college, to prepare for this new paradigm?
Yeah, I think the number one, to our earlier conversation, there's probably four core things. Number one is learn how to use your instruments. And that includes AI. And that includes your human body. And that includes Microsoft and Google and your phone. Like right now, you're on a rocket ship and you are traveling to your future, and you don't know how to use all the instruments and the technology that the world and billions of people have come together to create to hand you as an entrepreneur. And it's so easy for people to be lazy and get caught in a Netflix search or a Twitter or a YouTube scroll. It's the time suck that pulls you away from your destiny. The reality is you've got to first learn your instruments and train yourself on the technologies that you have access to and your own human body, how to get your human body to a better place. Because no matter whom I'm talking to, you can make better decisions with your diet and exercise and your life and who you talk to and who you don't, and people who are energy vampires and who aren't. Make those good decisions every day. And the more good decisions you make, the better things get. That'd be number one. Number two would be, if you're getting into business, start at the finish line. That's my theme in life. Start at the finish line. And that is, if you're going to create a company, pick a business with a high exit multiple, not a low exit multiple, because every industry has different exit multiples. But the thing is, it takes just as much work to create a business with a low exit multiple than it does to create a business with a high exit multiple. And, that goes from passion and process. I've always said to people, and this is probably the third thing, is they said the line, do what you love and the money will follow. I don't think that's right at all. I think you find out where the money and the value is moving around what you love and put yourself there. And that's a very different sort of young career advice point where people are like, oh, I'm just going to do what I love and suddenly everything's going to happen the right way. No, you've got to understand the value formula and how it's getting exchanged in the industry that you might be passionate about.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a big point today. You hear from so many young people, I'm just going to pursue my passion. Well, I believe that you can find a way to make money in any industry. But like you said, you've got to be in the lane where the money's flowing. And to what you said earlier, of course, like when we're in tech, there's this assumption that tech multiples can be large. And so I think that's a place where you can not spend a lot of capital and have the huge multiple exit on the back end. So that's why we all love tech. And I think that's why we all dream of getting into it. But I have met so many people who they started off doing some arcane business where it probably would have sold at 3 to 4 times earnings. And you're right, they spent 10 years building something where they could have done something differently and had the same effort, the same time, the same revenue, but one was 5 times more on the back end.
Yeah.
So I think that's just doing it intelligently, which is really great.
And then career wise too, the last thing is the piece of that unlocks it is when you're looking for a job, work for a company that has a high exit multiple. Because, you have to say, okay, well, there's more value there because innately there's more value in the exit multiple. So put yourself in that room as well.
Yeah, one of the things I've coached really great candidates to do that not many do often is when they're negotiating, because the C-level roles can make a huge impact, when they're negotiating their compensation, and maybe you coming from the other side is the person who's doing the hiring, maybe you'll like this or not like this. Sometimes they get bogged down in, well, I need another 20 grand in base, or I want to get another, blah, 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 extra half a percentage of equity. It becomes this negotiation around kind of price and salary and where that stacks up relative to others. And I always said, start off with this idea. Can you quantify how much value, I mean financial value, you're going to create? So if the company's doing 10 million in revenue and you're brought in as the CMO or the chief revenue officer, and you said, look, these are the milestones that I will commit to hit. And if I do, that 10 million goes to 15 million, but the multiple now goes to X that growth number. So we're debating over 20 grand. If I am successful, I'm going to create another $30 million of actual valuation, actual equity for you and the team and the board and so on. And people don't always go that route, but it's really a smart way to negotiate. If I were running a company, I would want to hear that. And then the equation would be, okay, let's talk realistically at what we have to do to hit those targets and whether it's going to really be something that's possible. And it's a different way of looking at it. But I think, again, starting from the exit, even when you're negotiating for your compensation, rather than just think about what you're going to do, think about what the value that will be delivered when you're successful is. And now it's off the playing field. So
I love that. I think that's great advice. And, I wish more people would do that, where they would basically understand that the value they add equates to this much revenue, equates to this much valuation for the firm as it grows based on comps. I mean, the number of people who actually go to that length is low. So that would be a phenomenal approach for team members.
Well, that'll tell you someone who's really been around the block. And if they also walk in the door and say, can you share with me the liquidation preferences? I'm dealing with a seasoned guy.
There we go. Exactly. And now with AI, a lot more people are going to understand liquidation preferences, which is good.
Well, they are, sure, definitely. Moving to philosophy, because we talked about earlier, our experiences when we were in college, your philosophy major. And I had a lot of philosophical discussions when I was in college, even though I was not an actual philosophy major. But I wanted to get your reaction to one of my favorite quotes from Plato, okay? And I'm going to just read it to you this real quickly. Plato was once asked a question. What are the behaviors of people that surprise you the most? Plato replied, they get bored in childhood and hurry to grow up, but then they miss their childhood. They lose their health to earn money, but they pay money to regain their health. Worried about tomorrow, they forget about today. In the end, they live neither today nor tomorrow. They live as if they will never die, but they die as if they have never lived. I love your quote. Reaction, because you've done so much, and in your life, you've done extreme things by some people's measure, like physically with your body, but you've built this, hopefully will become the world leader in bringing people physically and virtually together to have common experiences, which is the core essence of life. That's really all you ever take with you, right? Are the memories of the experiences you had with other people. And that's what you leave as the gift to other people. So in that context, I'd love to get your reaction and thought on this.
Yeah, the first thing that came to mind to, um, my son who's 8, I said to him once, I said, and this is in reference to the final few comments you just made at first, is, hey Finn, do you remember the time we went to that event in Big Bear? And he said, oh yes, Dad, we did this, we did that. This is what happened. That was, oh my gosh, and that person was there, and he went through the whole thing. And I said, what happened 3 days before that? He said, I had no idea. Right. And it's back to that concept of what A, slows our life down, and 2, makes it richer. And the moments that we live, and in, not to be corny, but the events that we do and the events that we're involved in are the things we remember. They're the things that decorate our lives. And the people we do those events with become more memorable, and the experiences become indelible. And that moving between day to day, routine to routine, blur to blur, I don't remember, to indelible moment to indelible moment to indelible moment, is, I think, a way to bring people back to the present moment and to have them wake up and realize. Because the great undiscovered continent that everyone's really looking for sometimes is another person that they meet.
Yeah.
And the experience we all have on this crazy rock with a burning center. And if you combine, like, I don't know if you know this, like, you combine the speed of the Earth's rotation with the Earth's rotation around the sun, with the sun's rotation around the universe, with the universe's projectile through, or sorry, the galaxy's projectile through the universe, and so on. It's like we're moving at 500,000 miles an hour right now. The time I said this sentence, but by the time I finished the sentence, you and I are both 20,000 miles away when we started the sentence in space time. And so that sort of like, oh my goodness moment of how blessed we are to be here in this exact moment, and to take your problems and just squash them to what they really are relative to the fact that you're alive on this earth, I think is my first reaction to that quote. In a way, teaching our kids to not live the way Plato had aptly described many people's lives. And those moments of hesitation and frustration and loss and all the things that we'll go through as humans, and then to counterbalance that with just living your best life, which we all need to do more of every single day.
I often think too, as you just kind of expressed, we're in this endless universe of spinning rocks around each other. It's hard to get your head around it. It's a deep philosophical, spiritual thing. The idea that for many of us, we meet at one moment at a time, only one time in our life. It all comes together in time, space. What do we do in that one moment we have, which we'll never regain again? Was it an accident? Was it the power of the universe, God, something else? But we connect for that second. Are we aware of what's going on, and can we take advantage, or do we just squander it and let it dissipate? Very, very interesting things. I wanted to wrap it up back to that famous commencement speech 35 years ago. And you left the end of it with something that you called a gift to your student body, which would be the gift of perspective. It's been 35 years. If you could be back at that moment right now, as you said, in the speech itself, with the knowledge of those years in the future, and potentially the ability to actually implement some of that wisdom that you learned, what advice would you give people today? And would that speech have now changed? And how would it have changed 35 years?
That's a big question.
Of course.
Well, let me think. Yeah, the whole concept of being given the capacity to go in a time machine and go back and live your life over because you messed it up, back to your college graduation day. I guess maybe one of the parallels. So the toughest thing I ever did in my life wasn't the 22 Ironmans, of which I was a recreational triathlete. I wasn't trying to win them. I was the guy out on the race course going up to the guy on the bike next to me and saying, you want to buy an ad? Right. So, people have to, change the perspective a little bit on me as an athlete, right? That's middle of the pack, amazing just to finish and be in the sport and in the Pacific Ocean, etc. So, but I remember the toughest thing I ever went through in my life, bizarrely enough, was something really teeny. And it was when I went to swim practice and jumped in the pool really quickly and got a perilimb fistula in my ear. And I went from perfect sound to ridiculous rip-roaring tinnitus.
Mm-hmm.
In my right ear, which was one of the most difficult to ever think. Yeah. And then They high dosed me with prednisone, which turned me from a natural golden retriever into like a whippet, you know?
Yeah,
So
a Rottweiler.
a Rottweiler, going through that experience, it was a real change in perspective because I had to now mentally get over the fact that I was listening to a trumpet all day long, every day, and it would never go away. And then you have to acoustically habituate. And I'll never forget, there was a guy named Porter Elliott was his name. He was the friend of Lewis Elliott, the professional triathlete. And he said he had gone through the same thing when he got a ski injury in his head and got rip-roaring tinnitus and went through the psychology of everything peaceful to everything crazy and loud. And, oh my gosh, I'm going to live through this. I mean, what was it? Cezanne cut his ear off from it. So I think it was Cezanne. I'm not sure which artist, but
Van Gogh, I think, was famous
Van
for that
Gogh
as well.
Yeah. So the long and the short of it for me was he said something to me I'll never forget. And that was what I would want to reach back and tell myself is he said, listen, I've been through it. What you're going through now, it gets better and you make it through. Because that's the thing that when you're in those moments of whatever it is, a health challenge, a business challenge, a personal challenge, a family challenge, where you feel like it's not going to get better and I'm not going to get through. And, if you had that knowledge that it will get better and you will get through going through all of those things, that it gets better. Someone said, I think yesterday to me, yeah, when the blank hits the fan, the reality is people don't realize that the fan keeps going, just the blank goes away.
Yeah.
Right. So, I sort of wish that would be something I'd reach back and want to give myself a nudge on, which is, it gets better.
Yeah.
And you'll get through this.
Or as my mother has always said, this too shall pass.
Yeah, this too shall pass.
I always remember that. And as you ended that speech, I would like to welcome you back. 2025.
Welcome back to 2025, right?
It's really been awesome having you on. You're very inspirational. We could have a Joe Rogan 4-hour podcast. Your life is so rich and your experiences, you tell things in such a funny, charming, humble way. I hope people, go beyond just this pod, do a little research on you, do a little research on events.com, because you're probably going to be using it, or someone in your family is going to be using it, or someone at work is going to be using it. So you might as well get up to speed today. Take your courses on AI, talk to your 12-year-olds, and remember more than anything that all we really have is this present moment. Let's make the most of it. And all we really leave behind are the memories and the experiences of the people that we did good things with. So thank you so much, Mitch, for being on the Venture Victory podcast.
It's been great, Tim. You're amazing. I appreciate you.
Thank you. And that's a wrap for today. Cheers.
The Venture to Victory podcast is provided by MatchStar Venture Search. If you're interested in any of our open executive roles or need help sourcing world-class talent for your company, check out our website at matchstar.com.